Hi there, and welcome to this week's edition of the Gersnet Weekly Podcast, the independent Rangers podcast, which is made by fans for fans, where the content is absolutely free. And guys, as I tell you every week, it's not just the pod that's free. We have articles, social media. There's a history archive, and it's all original, independent, and free content made by us for you. It is episode 106 of the Gersnet Weekly Podcast. I'm your host this evening. I'm Colin Armstrong. If it's the first time that you've listened to the pod, then we would encourage you to subscribe and share on social media. We have over 3,000 subscribers now, so thanks to everyone who subscribes so far and listens every week. The podcast is live tonight. It's Sunday night. However, it will be available to download or stream on a variety of platforms from tomorrow morning, including Acast, iTunes, YouTube, Castbox, Stitcher, Spotify, and anywhere else that you get your podcast from. Now, guys, another great week for Rangers. It's been a good week all round. A good win on Thursday night in Europe, followed up by an outstanding victory today in Motherwell at Fir Park. So we'll have a wee look at that. We'll have a look at both games. We'll start with the Motherwell game and then look at the game on Thursday night and the Galatasaray game coming up this Thursday. We'll also have a wee look at the SFA's ridiculous charge of Steven Gerrard. It's so funny. It's actually sad. So we'll have a wee discussion around that. A wee look at Ross County next week. At Ibrox on the Sunday, and then at Super Rally turn 58 this week. So we'll have a wee discussion about McCoist because obviously his reputation took a wee bit of a battering when he was the manager there, and we'll have a wee discussion as to where he is now with the supporters. So joining me this week, we've got the two Davids this week. It's good night from him and it's good night from me, all that sort of stuff. First one up is David Wren, fellow host as well. How are you, David? How's your weekend been?
Yes, all the better for today's result. I was working today as well, so I was sort of juggling the two things, but no, all good, and I think it helps when there's a victory to talk about.
Yeah, I had quite a busy day today, actually. I mean, I was up this morning, I was out for a walk with my daughter, 5 miles, check me, by the way, and then sat and watched the game, and then I was through to Giffnock in Glasgow. My boy had a game through there against Glasgow City. So we were through there, and it was quite funny. I had a wee, you're probably too young to remember this, David, maybe the other David will know, but the original Taggart, Mark McManus, when he was Taggart, the house that he stayed in, and I was walking about, I dropped my boy off today to play football, and then I went to get a cup of tea. I went into the sort of main street in Giffnock. As I was coming back, I was like, this kind of looks like the place that Taggart stayed. So I done a bit of Googling, and sure enough, that's where he stayed. That was where they used the house in the show. It was just round the corner. So a wee bit of Taggart start for you there. Has that made your evening a lot better, David?
You lost me at Taggart, I'm afraid.
I'm sure David Fraser would have enjoyed that sort of Taggart stuff more than you. Would you have, David? Am I right in that?
I'm a Taggart fan. I guess back in the day, I was a bit partial to a Mark McManus detective story.
Yeah, I don't think he was as good as Rebus, but it was just one of those wee things, a wee bit of sort of trivia, you know. And how are you, David? The other David, I don't know how it's going to be awkward tonight when I'm saying David because the two will be jumping in. But how's your weekend been? Enjoy the result today?
It goes without saying, it's been a good week in Rangers land after the mini catastrophe according to social media last Sunday. So my pecker is up, shall we say.
I kind of disagreed with the catastrophe last week, I have to say. I thought it wasn't, obviously, I think the most frustrating aspect about it was the fact that we had the game won and then we just, that stupid error cost us. But I didn't think it was as bad a result as many painted out. But anyway, right, let's move on, guys.
I'm not one of them, Colin. I sided with yourself, your good self, and your opinion on the show last week.
Good man. Right, so on to matters this week, guys. Great result today, 5-1 against Motherwell. Especially coming back after the game on Thursday night. The whole European hangover thing. We've got over that, and not only won, but won convincingly well. David Wren, I'll come to you first on this. I mean, in my view, I thought we were saying off air there, and David Fraser was sort of saying he thinks it's the most professional performance he's seen from Gerrard side coming off the back of a European game. I can see where he's coming from that. I thought it was a thoroughly professional performance today. I thought we played really well, right up for it for the start. 5 goals, goal spread amongst the players as well. Itten got his first goal, and Jones had such an impact on the game and scored a cracking goal as well. So, I mean, overall, you would have to say a thoroughly decent day at the office.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest compliment I can pay to Steven Gerrard and the team was the fact that it was a really enjoyable 90 minutes, and that might sound a bit daft, but I think for a lot of us that have watched Rangers over the past 3 years, even under Gerrard, I think there's always a fear, especially as David said off air, coming off the back of these European trips, and going to a place like Motherwell, where historically over the past couple of years has been a really difficult place to go for a lot of teams in the league, and they're very physical. Today we didn't see that at all, really. I didn't think they really laid a glove on us at all. I felt like I thought that first chance, in the first, to get a chance that early through Morelos, a fantastic save by Trevor Carson. But that sort of set the tone for the game. We were on the front foot from the start, and then that just continued as the game went on. Nice to get a penalty in the league as well. It's been a wee while since we got one of those. And as you say, I mean, I was really happy with the way some of the boys that hadn't really played came into the game, and all come on to this. But Calvin Bassey and Jordan Jones especially, I thought, I said to you, Colin, this morning when the team came out, that excited me, the fact that they two were in the team, and I was pleased to see them do so well. And then obviously big Cedric Itten getting his first couple of goals there. And the first one was a magnificent strike, fantastic goal, probably the goal of the day. And yeah, I mean, just really, really satisfying to watch that, especially, after last week, which, as you say, it wasn't a catastrophe, but it was certainly, a bit more downbeat that would drop points. So to put in a performance like that, what could have been a tricky fixture, no complaints, and I think really, really positive week.
David Fraser, I've come to you now. In terms of the team selection, as David has said there, Hagi was dropped today and Jordan Jones came in, and they left out Borna for Bassey. Now, Gerrard confirmed before the game. I was a wee bit surprised when I got the message, because I hadn't seen the team, because, as I said, I was out for a walk. I got back in sort of 10 minutes before the kick-off. And David had messaged me to say, that Bassey was in. I was a wee bit surprised at that. I thought, a wee bit surprised that he's come in, because we rely so much on Borna going forward and for set pieces and cross balls and stuff like that. But it turns out he's got a wee niggle on his groin. They didn't want to risk him. But Hagi's the one I wanted to talk about, because he has sort of attracted a bit of criticism on social media and various other platforms from a few Rangers supporters. So I maybe wasn't surprised about Hagi being dropped, but Jones coming in did surprise me a wee bit. But in terms of Hagi himself, did you think it was fair that he was sort of relegated to the bench today? And what's your thoughts on his overall performance levels this season? Because I don't think he has quite hit the heights that we're expecting of him. But that said, I don't think he's been as bad as many have made out. And I think we have to remember that the boy's only 21 years old and, still trying to establish himself. So what's your thoughts on Hagi? Do you think the criticism's deserved and he deserved to lose his place, or do you think he's been unfairly sort of treated at the moment?
I think you're damned if you do, damned if you don't, with regards to Yanis Hagi, Colin. First up, I rate him as a player. As you rightly mentioned, he's only 21. I think a lot of people are maybe not taking that into account as much as they should. There's no doubt about it in my mind that the weight of expectation, because of the name in the back of his jersey, counts for quite a lot in the eyes of some supporters. And then they've got the added weight, if you like, with regards to the fee that was involved for him. What we were led to believe was that they tied him up for for between £3 and £3.25 million in the summer. And at that kind of money, given our spending power these days, that then in a lot of the eyes of a lot of supporters, the expectation levels go up, because you think, well, at that kind of money, we should be expecting a player who's more of the finished article. But as I've said there, the guy's only 21. As a youngster, I think he was on the books of Galatasaray, if memory serves, and then he got a move to Fiorentina, and then Fiorentina saw fit to move him on to Genk in Belgium. So, it's a hard one. You can see elements of his game where he seems to be lightweight, and he's maybe not as good as he could be at protecting the ball. Sometimes his touches, his control isn't instant, and then there's other times where he looks as if he's on song and he knows how to move with the ball at his feet. I think the one thing that you definitely can see, or certainly from my perspective anyway, he's got a footballing brain. His vision and some of his touches, I'd go as far to say are exquisite, and he brings something to the team in that respect that no one else has really got. The only player that I would possibly see that might have that type of vision would be maybe Joe Aribo. You've seen from his set-up play for Scott Arfield's goal at Easter Road last week. Again, he was excellent. Ali McCoist waxed lyrical about it in commentary, and he's had some smashing touches. But there's other times where you think he looks lost. He looks like a wee boy on the pitch, and I think it's far too early to judge the boy. I think I'd like to see him over time put maybe half a stone on, maybe certainly 3 to 4 pounds of weight on that, but that would help him in terms of shielding the ball. But would that then negate from any speed work that he might be doing? Because you could legitimately level a criticism at him for being maybe a yard short, or certainly half a yard short. So you'd like to think if we could round the rough edges in his game, you would say speed him up by a yard and maybe put a bit of weight on. But you can see how he might flit in and out of the team. But I wouldn't be surprised to see him come back in and start the match on Thursday night against Galatasaray. That said,
I think the sort of the best example we can use with Hagi is Kent. I think the sort of criticisms that are getting aimed at Hagi at the moment, we were aiming at Ryan Kent last season, and he's went away in the close season. It seems to me, it's funny you're talking about Hagi maybe needs to bulk up a wee bit. I think Kent has. I think he looks a bit more of a unit this season, and his performance levels are through the roof at the moment. So I think we have an example there that if we're patient enough and we give the boy a chance, I think, like you say, he has got a footballing brain. I think he could come good for us. That said, given the money that we've spent on him, you maybe do expect a wee bit more, because he has got moments, but I just think we need a wee bit more from him. But I do think we have to show a bit of patience with him. David, coming back to you on Jordan Jones. Now, he's a guy that very much it's felt like on more than one occasion that his Rangers career is dead and buried. And like I said earlier on today, I was surprised when he was back in the team. I genuinely had the feeling that Gerrard had taken a dislike to him. I think the action in the Old Firm game when he got sent off, I don't think that served him any favours when it came to Gerrard. And I genuinely did at more than one point. I thought there's no way back for this guy. And before the game today, Chris Boyd was kind of alluding to that, and then the sort of build up, saying this is his last chance. He needs to put in a performance, and he did. He put in an excellent performance, and I'd noticed him a couple of times before his goal. Holding up the ball well, beating a couple of players, distribution excellent at times. And then the goal, the goal was excellent. The bit of movement before it with Scott Arfield, a give and go with a couple of players. Great ball from Arfield. But the way Jones takes it on his right foot, puts it on his left, and then just slams it home, topped off a really, really good performance. So do you think this could be a turning point in Jordan Jones' Rangers career, or is it just a wee flash in the pan before he's eventually shown the door?
I thought on Thursday night when he came on, he did well. Just showed a bit of urgency and a sort of bit like he wanted to make an impression on Thursday. You made the point with Chris Boyd talking about before the game, and the thing about that is, Boyd knows all too well how good Jones can be on his day. God knows how many goals he set up for Boyd when they were at Kilmarnock together. So the thing for me, and this was something that came to my mind, a few weeks ago when Brandon Barker was playing week in, week out, and I could sort of see why Barker was playing, and it was to give us that sort of bit of pace and that sort of natural winger in the final third there in the front three. But I mean, it was quite obvious to see that it just wasn't really happening for Barker, and I think the difference between Barker and Jones is, I think for Barker, he struggles with that self-belief sometimes and the confidence to wear the jersey in many ways and to sort of believe that he's good enough to play at that level week in, week out. Jones doesn't lack that confidence. He won't be a player that will shirk a challenge. He believes in himself and believes in his own ability, which is something that you need when you play for a club the size of Rangers and with that expectation. I think, as you say, a couple of things that went against them last season. I think there was maybe a heavy influence of Mark Allen in that signing. When he came from Kilmarnock, I think he'd been earmarked, long before he actually came for the move. So I would like to see him get a run. I'd like to see him given a chance. For me, guys like him and guys like actually Greg Stewart, who I think's had a tough time of it really at Rangers in terms of the opportunities he's been given. But they're the sort of guys that should be playing in these games, these games after the big European ties on the Thursday night, because they're proven Premiership players who can do it at that level. So I don't think we've actually made the most over the past year or so of guys like Jones and Greg Stewart, because they're the sort of guys that should be coming in for the Sunday games after the Thursday European tie and making an impact. And I think they could. I think Jones proved it today that, he's got the ability to play within that team and in that system. And he's never going to be one not to ask for the ball and not to take on men and try and make things happen. So, yeah, for me, today he's certainly played himself into Gerrard's thoughts. And I don't think it's a flash in the pan. I think he has the ability to keep that consistent level of performance. But I mean, don't get me wrong, when I'd obviously covered Kelly quite a lot when he was there, and I was surprised Rangers signed him. But I think to go back to your previous point about Kent bulking up, Jones looks a lot stronger now than he did when he was at Kilmarnock. Physically looks a lot bigger, so he's obviously working hard. He's caught Gerrard's eye, and he's not done himself any harm today, because I think he's shown that if nothing else, he's a better option than Brandon Barker. And Barker before his injury was getting a fair run in the team, so there's no reason why now Jones can't expect the same.
David, the other sort of main player brought in today was Calvin Bassey. As I said earlier on, Borner's got a sort of wee tweak in his groin, so Gerrard didn't want to risk him. I think, obviously, thinking about the game against Galatasaray on Thursday, I was a little bit apprehensive when I saw Bassey was in the team. Not because I don't rate the boy, but just because Barisic is so important to us. Him and Tav pushing up, delivering the amount of assists that both of them get. But I think Barisic, especially, the quality of his delivery is exceptional at times. At set pieces, corner kicks, all that kind of stuff. And I just feel he's so important to us. And so when I saw he wasn't playing and what could be a tricky game, I was a wee bit apprehensive. But I actually thought Calvin Bassey came in and done really well. And he's another boy that's a bit of a unit. He's a sturdy bit of tin, so to speak. What about yourself? How did you feel Bassey played today in his first start for the club?
I take it it's directed to myself, Colin.
Aye, David. You, no, the other David. You, David.
Right.
How many Davids in this room?
I, like yourself, I thought Calvin Bassey played well. When I saw his inclusion in the starting lineup, I wasn't that apprehensive about him starting. I can see where you're coming from with regards to Borna's attacking prowess, but I think in the cameos that Calvin Bassey has shown when he's come into the side, especially against Dundee United, Ibrox, that he looks more than capable, certainly going forward. Maybe not as high up the pitch as Barisic tends to be more often than not, but his attributes, I think, were there for all to see today as to why the coaching staff saw fit to sign him. As you mentioned, he's certainly physically, he's got prowess about him when he's moving. He's not going to be bullied on the pitch by any manner of means, by the looks of things. He's reasonably mobile, and when he gets up to speed, he's certainly not slow. He's no lightning quick either, but he's certainly fast enough. He looks to have decent technical ability when it comes to passing the ball. The only thing you'd maybe, the question mark you'd have against him, judged based on today's performance and judging by the threats that Motherwell took to him today, was he wasn't really tested. But I thought his performance was certainly like a lot of guys in the side today. I mean, I could take up another 10 minutes talking about how good the performances were all over the pitch today, but Bassey certainly didn't let himself down. I think based on that performance, if Barisic were to drop out the side for whatever reason, I think we've got an able deputy in the squad. Another young guy who can only improve. He falls into the same category as Yanis Hagi, in the sense that he's in the right place with regards to our coaches are presumably going to get the best out of the guy, and he's only going to get better. So I thought it was yet another pleasing aspect to today's performance, which you could argue was possibly one of the better ones in the league campaign this season so far.
Guys, to get over the confusion between the two Davids, I'm going to continue calling David Fraser David and David Wren. I'm going to go down the Cy Ferry route and refer to you as Rennie. Okay, so Rennie, Tav was on the score sheet again today. 2 penalties. Now, before we actually talk about Tav's performance levels this season, I believe Michael Stewart claimed on Sports Scene tonight that neither penalty today was a penalty, but Motherwell should have had a penalty. The whole Mr. Biomechanics is back at it again. Utter horseshit for an absolute clown of a man. But taking that to one side, he's took his two penalties well. His overall performances this year have been fairly, you'd have to say they've been outstanding really. He's a man yet again, and he's took his fair share of stick on here as well. Nothing personal, always constructive, but he has taken a bit of criticism on the show a few times. But this season, Rennie, he seems to have really upped it this season.
That Rennie part is absolutely, I don't know where you've magicked that up. That's obviously been between David Fraser being asked the question, him answering the question. You've been writing down your notepad, different names to call me there.
I could have came up with a few worse names, to be fair. But what do you want me to call you? I've got to, because the David thing isn't working. I'm going David this, David that. Right, I'll call you Mr. Wren. Mr. Wren, Tav. What have you got?
Bit of respect at last. Nice. Sorry, to go back to the question. I don't know. I mean, I was watching the game, and there were obviously 2 handballs. I would assume that they're to do with this new rule, which, having watched the Spurs game straight after ours, is crazy. It really is. It's a crazy rule. But listen, I wasn't shocked that we got the penalties. I thought they were reasonable enough. There was no real. I think the second one was a strange position to have your arm in, and then it sort of looked like he actioned his arm away from his body and sort of hit the ball. First one looked a bit more clear cut. It hit the guy's arm, which was looked away from his body. But again, handball penalties are always difficult, but Tav's just got to put them away, and it's good to see him back in the goals from the penalty spot. That's 3 in 2 games, because there was a wee spell there where we weren't really sure who the penalty taker was because we'd missed so many. So yeah, that was good. And I thought, to be fair, I thought maybe the first one, Kamara, on the guy Campbell, who incidentally I quite like the boy Campbell as a player, but I thought perhaps in another day that maybe could have been a penalty. But other than that, they'd done a couple of shouts that I didn't think were. But listen, it's one of them penalties. We've gone long enough without getting any. So yeah, you could talk all day about the merits of awarding penalties and whatever. The most important thing is the player that takes them has got to put them in the back of the net, and Tav did that, and that's really all that I care about. On Tav himself, I mean, I'm a massive fan, and I would very rarely slag him off, even and there has been, and probably merited, he's made a few mistakes over the past few years, but I think Tav and Goldson seem to take a wee bit of stick from the support, or certain parts of the support. I think they're in the team every week for a reason. It's because they're two of our most, consistent players. Tavernier's, been a great servant to the club, and the goals he scored from right back, quite incredible. And I'm a massive fan. I think he offers so much going forward, and I actually think leadership qualities as well, in terms of the way he conducts himself on the pitch and his overall ability and sense of professionalism is, fitting of a Rangers captain. And that I've been delighted to see him do so well this season, along with Barisic. Both of them have been, player of the year contenders, even as early as this. Certainly the first few games they've been absolutely outstanding. And I think if he continue, they're two of our most important players, and if they continue to play the way they're playing at the moment, we'll certainly be up there come the end of the season. And it's good to see him getting goals again, getting in amongst it. And yeah, I've got no complaints over Tav, and I think he deserves this good run.
I think part of the problem is with Goldson and Tavernier is, they're pillars of consistency, but see when they do make an error, they tend to lead to a goal. You know what I mean? And in that respect, I think they're maybe just a wee bit unlucky. You know what I mean? Because plenty of defenders and centre halves, fullbacks, whatever, make mistakes, but they don't always lead to a goal. It seems whenever they do anything wrong, it does directly lead to a goal. And in that respect, I think they're a wee bit unlucky. But I think that's where some of the criticism comes from. And I think players you're allowed to criticise players as long as it's constructive. Then I think you are, and I think some of the criticism that Tav and Goldson have taken has been legitimate. It's when it gets personal though that I think that's when it goes too far. When people are just having a go at people for the sake of it.
I think when the fans are in the ground, you notice it a wee bit more. And it seems to be like if Tavernier makes a mistake or something happens, he puts the ball out of play, or any minor thing, it seems like it's very quick that folk are on his back. And I don't know, as you say, there's been a few high-profile blunders there. But I think it's unfair on him, considering the amount of effort. The thing I like about Tavernier as well is he will never not ask for the ball. No matter what's happened in the game, he's always available for the ball. He'll always take the ball, and I think that's that shows that's a marker of him as a player. And I think it's when your best players are always going to be the ones that get the most. Are highlighted the most, I suppose, and I think he falls into that. There's expectations on him that perhaps there isn't on other players, and maybe that's just why the nature of it, why he gets more criticism, just because he is such a high-profile player in the current team.
Mr. Fraser, coming back to you. We're using our Sunday titles here to avoid the confusion. Man of the match performance today by Scott Arfield. Now, I've sort of went on about Scott Arfield a lot in the past. He's a player I really, really like. But, his form's been a wee bit indifferent maybe over the last sort of 6 to 12 months. Kind of in and out of the team, no longer a sort of regular starter. But he came on against Dundee United a couple of weeks ago, and he really looked hungry and involved in a lot of that game. Got his goal. Obviously got the goal last week. Started last week and got the goal. And he's looked kind of like a born again player. You know, he looks really revitalised. I think you were talking earlier on about Hagi having a football brain and being a very, very intelligent player. I think Scott Arfield's the same. I think he uses the ball really, really well. When he's on top form, he's one of our better players. So how do you feel about Scott Arfield? How pleasing is it that he's sort of displaying this kind of form? And is he, maybe putting a case there to say that maybe Ryan Jack, for example, shouldn't be walking right back into that team if he's displaying this kind of level of performance?
I'm very, very enthused by Scotty Arfield's performance of late, Colin. Without encroaching on a topic for later in the show, I thought his performance in Tilburg on Thursday night was outstanding, and I thought he took that into the game today. I know people might be listening to that and saying, but he gave the ball away a few times in Holland. He did, but I thought, like today, his performance, he knitted things together. It was an accomplished, experienced performance by Scott Arfield today. He was in the right areas of the pitch. He sped the play up when it required to be sped up. He slowed it down when it required to be slowed down. Some of his one-touch, wee 3-yard passes and triangles, and obviously he slipped through to Jordan Jones for the second goal was perfectly weighted. He set up Cedric Itten for his first goal in a Rangers jersey. His overall play was excellent, showing the benefits of experience. Obviously, there's a couple of guys have come into the squad during the closed season, and as you say, I mean, he's had an indifferent period of time in a Rangers jersey, late Scott Arfield, to the extent where you'd maybe think, would he possibly be slipping down the pecking order? Could he possibly, even assuming that the Rangers still are actively in the market for midfielders, could he possibly be deemed surplus to requirements in short order? But I would say his performances, certainly in the last two games, would render that opinion possibly preposterous. He was excellent in both games. He was good at Easter Road last week as well, without being quite, as good as he was today. And to get back, I didn't manage to say with regards to Yanis Hagi, and this could apply to even, as David was mentioning about Connor Goldson and James Tavernier. I think it's important to remember that there's a silver lining to the cloud of not having fans in stadia, because I think that certainly Scott Arfield, James Tavernier, certainly Yanis Hagi, would possibly be getting a lot of stick for the stands for some of the foibles in their play, if you like. But with regards to cementing his place in the side for the foreseeable future, I think it's heartening to say that we've got guys like Joe Aribo, Ryan Jack, Kamal Roof out the side, and the team are still performing to a decent level. I mean, today, the biggest thing for me today was the intensity and the work rate, which was evident in the game against United at Ibrox, was evident on Thursday night, and they just basically left off from Thursday night and just took that into the game today. The work rate was excellent. Tavernier was closing down Motherwell players in their own box today, and you might say that's as much Motherwell's fault as it is a good aspect of Rangers play. But the work rate was excellent today for the whole team, and to try and come at the point here, I think Scott Arfield epitomised that. But his man of the match performance, I think there was a toss up between possibly 2, 3, 4 Rangers players today. It was that good a performance.
Mr. Wren, coming back to you. I'm forgetting what David I'm talking to here. Right, the final point in today's game. Another player that's, not so much at the games, obviously, because we're not in the the stadiums at the moment, so it's all been on social media. But Cedric Itten or Itten, whatever you want to call him, he has come in for a bit of stick over the last few weeks. Hasn't got his goal yet. I've seen a few people starting to write him off, saying that we'd signed a dud. He came on today. I mean, I think it was, as David Fraser pointed out earlier on, his first goal was an absolute peach. The second goal is, I wouldn't say better, but it's certainly an instinctive striker's goal. He reacts quickest. The ball sort of bouncing about the box, and he's the one that reacts and just taps it in. And it struck me that a really relieving point. I think it's always good for a striker to get the first goal. It's almost like that's the weight lifted off their shoulders, because that's what they want as a striker. You want your first goal. So how good was it to see that, to see him coming on? Because he looked like he enjoyed it today once he got that goal. And one thing I did like was the reaction of his teammates when he scored. It was almost as if none of them could be happier for him. And that's good to see. It sort of suggests to me that there's a strong team spirit there. This guy coming in, scoring his first goal, he looks delighted, teammates all around him. So how did you feel about Itten today, Mr. Wren?
He was good. No, it was good to see him, as you say, get the first goals there. And I mean, it's difficult. I've Itten and Roof, actually, when they both first came in, I felt like they were getting, shoved on and expected to, pull miracles out of the hat. When the Livingston game, and both of them came on, and it was like expected that they should save us that day. And I think the thing is, between Roof and Itten, Roof is the established striker who we've brought in probably for a few quid from Anderlecht. He's the one that's expected to really hit the ground running. For me, Etten's going to be the one who, we develop and then becomes a great player at Rangers, rather than Roof, who we're expecting really a bit more from straight away. So I never had a major expectation on him early doors, and he's been coming on at certain points, and he obviously started a couple of games and then got injured. So yeah, I mean, it's good. It's always good for strikers, and I think every supporter wants to see that as well. I mean, it was the same when Roof got his first goal against Kilmarnock. You want to see your strikers score, and you want them to get that confidence up, because the last thing you want is a striker there that's coming on for 15-20 minutes a game, still not scoring, and the next thing you know, it's December and you've yet to get on the score sheet. So for him to come on today and not only score, but to put it away the way he did the first one, that was showed a bit of confidence there. And then, as you say, the second one was a bit more instinctive, a good striker's goal. I think he'll do well. I think he just needs a bit of time to get used to life in the UK, which is slightly different to Roof, who's obviously coming back to British football. So I think we've got to be patient with him, and I think the manager will be. I think Gerrard realises that will be the case, and that's the most important thing, really. And I think he'll protect him in that sense. But the goals will do him no harm, and I think at the moment Morelos will continue as a main striker until certainly Roof's back fit. And I mean, who knows what the future holds for Morelos between now and the 5th of October. But certainly, he takes a bit of pressure off Itten there, and he's certainly got, including Defoe, you've got 3 strikers around him there that are going to help him, and that helps take the bit of pressure off him. But for him to get his first goal and to take them in such style, can only be viewed as a good thing.
Guys, moving on, I think we'll move on to the game on Thursday night. Mr. Fraser, before this game, I think even when we were on the show last week, there was a feeling that this could be a tricky game. We've obviously done well, and Gerrard seems to have these qualifying games sussed from a coaching point of view. His record in it is absolutely outstanding, but the one-off nature of the tie, away from home, Dutch side, the fact that you kind of feel that the longer you go on, that by the law of averages, you're going to come unstuck at some point. So there did tend to be a feeling that might come on Thursday night. I believe that Mark Guidi was very confident on Radio Clyde on the Wednesday night. He predicted that all 3 clubs of the 4 clubs in Europe, 3 would go out, and that would be Rangers, Motherwell and Aberdeen, and only Celtic would go through comfortably. So nice to see that you got that right. I think we all thought we had a chance. I don't think we saw that level of performance and that scoreline coming. Although that said, Steven Gerrard seemed quite confident in his pre-match build-up. He sort of said that, if we reach the performance levels that we can and that we have done in the past, it would be enough. We would get through. In terms of the performance, how did you feel? I must admit, I loved it. Me and the wee man were having a jolly old time on Thursday night watching it. But I didn't see it coming. Not so much the victory, but the manner of the victory and how much we won by.
I certainly never seen it coming. Like yourself, Colin, I was viewing the match with a degree of trepidation. I spoke to my old fella on Thursday, and he was asking me, have you bought the game yet and got it ready for this evening's viewing? And I said, I've not bought it yet. I'm just a wee bit concerned about how tricky this tie might be, because reading the kind of the squad pen picks before the game of the Villemtwee side, I was expecting a crack Dutch outfit to come up against us the other night, and don't get me wrong, they had a couple of chances, obviously hit the bar, and if they missed they squandered a sitter as well that McGregor obviously saved. And if those chances, maybe one of them goes in, you're talking about a different game. But I think that Steven Gerrard and his analysis of the threats that they would pose Rangers, I think he quite succinctly said that their front 5 would represent a threat to Rangers and would need to marshal them. But he also said that if we play like we can, that their back line could be got at. And I think that was borne out to be the case the other night. Obviously, Ryan Kent played a starring role. He was unlucky with the ball that was played in the first minute, the long shell upfield for Connor Goldson that he couldn't really track in the floodlights that he managed to control, but he just he couldn't set himself properly to get a shot away. But his performance was outstanding. It's obviously fueled a discussion about whether he's going to get into the Gareth Southgate's are going to his radar. Possibly a bit early to be called into an England squad, but the more he performs at that level to that extent, it'd be Gareth Southgate would be. I'd say that Southgate would be looking at him. Possibly not to put him in a squad, but he'd certainly be looking at him. And to be honest with you, being quite biased towards Ryan Kent, I would say he's good enough to get into an England squad. Maybe not to play, but he's certainly good enough to be considered in a squad. But the performance the other night was excellent. I never saw 4-0 coming. But I just hope that what you're mentioning there about the statistics about these qualifiers, I hope we've got another one in the bag to pull out on Thursday night when we take on the Turks at Ibrox.
Mr. Wren, on that, Steven Gerrard's described it. He's described Galatasaray as Champions League opposition. And the game also, it kind of represents 11th place versus 12th place in the UEFA coefficient table. So Turkey are currently sitting 11th, Scotland are currently sitting 12th. Now, given that I think it's as of next season, we already have 2 Champions League places due to primarily probably down to Rangers, operating again in Europe and getting into the group stages and stuff. How vital is it? One, for Rangers as a club, I don't think it'll be quite the same in terms of revenue, because obviously we don't have the supporters getting into games and stuff like that. And if we do get through the tie on Thursday night, it's going to be hard to watch the draw and see the teams that we're not going to get to see, But taking that to one side, how vital is it? One, from Rangers' point of view, to get into the group stages, and two, a Scottish point of view in terms of the coefficient.
I think we want to be, in amongst it. Every season now, we've got a taste of it there. Last season and the season before, and actually we've had a much easier time of it in terms of the qualifying this season, just in terms of the volume of games. This is going to be, probably similar to last season's game against Legia Warsaw, and that, they're a team that are dangerous and historically have a great pedigree, similar to ourselves. So it's going to be hard, and it was quite funny because I'd actually looked at their team they put out on Thursday night in their qualifier. I found it quite strange that I couldn't, really recognise any of the names, and then when I actually looked at the squad list, and I got Arda Turan there and Falcao as well. So it'll be interesting. I would expect both of them to play on Thursday night as well. They drew with Fenerbahce 0-0 today. Wasn't a great result at home for them. Had 7 players booked as well. So I mean, I don't really know what to expect, but certainly I think it'll be a tough test for us. But we faced Feyenoord and Villarreal and all these kind of teams that we've faced over the past couple of years. We have Porto as well. We've come up against big teams and managed to get results, especially at Ibrox. So nothing really to fear. And after Thursday's performance, I think that was a real acid test in terms of how we were approaching Europe this season. Because actually, the team we played on Thursday night had barely lost a game at home. I don't think they'd lost a game at home for about a year. And then we turned them over 4-0. So that could have been a tricky fixture. I think this Thursday will be a harder fixture. I think they'll come prepared and they'll be a good side. But I think in terms of our standing as a club, we want to be in the Champions League ideally. But at the moment, the competition that's available to us is Europa League, and we should be trying everything we can to continue what's been a fantastic run under Steven Gerrard. To get to the last 16 last season, and then really have it disrupted by the coronavirus pandemic, and ultimately being put out by a top team in Leverkusen. We want another taste of that. We want to be competing at that level. It will be a bit different. It will be a bit depressing, actually, not being able to go and see the games and enjoy the European nights from anywhere other than our own living rooms. But yeah, I think it's important that we continue Europe for as long as we can again this season, and just keep that standing in the European on the European campaign and platform.
Final sort of point. I'll stick with you, David Wren, on this one. Given that both our connections with both clubs, Hagi's Da and Graham Souness, who do you think will be supporting?
Sorry, what do you mean? What do you mean? What's your question? Sorry, I missed that.
You switch off.
Me. No, you confused me.
Right, Hagi's Da.
Uh-huh.
Graham Souness.
Yeah.
They've got strong connections to both clubs on Thursday night, no?
Yes, no, agreed.
Right. So who are they supporting?
Right. I think both will be supporting Rangers. And the reason I say that is, well, Souness is a no doubt he was supporting Rangers, and surely Hagi wants the best for his son, no?
Probably. You know how that didn't work, David? It's because you never read the agenda. Anyway, right. Moving on again.
I read some of it. I read the headlines. That's
I'm going to go to Mr. Fraser. He's a better quality of guest, right? You just sit down there and think about what you've done. Right, Mr. Fraser, moving on again. We're going to talk about this ridiculous charge from the SFA and Steven Gerrard. It's related to the game against Dundee United when Morelos was crocked, basically. He had a big gash on his leg. He was asked whether it should have been a red card. I thought Steven Gerrard handled it well, but the SFA, in their wisdom, Claire White has come in as the as the compliance officer, someone who I believe has a strong connection with Peter Law and also with a law firm that represents Celtic Football Club, but we'll not get into that. Rangers released a statement after the charge was announced. I've got it here. It says, Rangers have been news that a notice of complaint has been raised against Steven Gerrard for comments relating to a challenge which caused injury to Alfredo Morelos. This bizarre charge, which we will robustly contest at the scheduled hearing. As is often the case, Steven Gerrard was asked for his view on a flashpoint in the match, which leading questions related to the challenge that caused the injury and whether it should have been deemed a red card. On several occasions, he refused to do so. Given the wide range of incidents in Scottish football so far this season, we are perplexed that this issue has been raised and cited for complaint. Whilst our national sport faces an unprecedented crisis, it is baffling that resources are used to charge Rangers manager based on a flawed and inaccurate interpretation of Steven Gerrard's remarks. Rangers will fully support its manager against the charge during the scheduled hearing. Now, the statement seems pretty clear, David. Were they right to comment? I mean, I felt yes. I thought the charge against Steven Gerrard was outrageous, and it kind of feels like the compliance officer is that whole system isn't operating fairly, in my opinion. I think most of us were expecting the player in question who made the challenge against Morelos. Can't remember who he is off the top of my head. I think we all expected him to get cited. Didn't see anything wrong with that, but then Steven Gerrard gets called up for commenting on it. Surely a load of nonsense.
Utterly preposterous is the only way I can describe it. I'm at a bit of a loss. The only comments I heard were, I was obviously watching the season ticket stream, and I think, if memory serves, it was Nick Thompson that put the question to him. I don't think it was David Graham that was doing the media duties that day. And Stevie, to be fair to him, obviously acknowledged that the tackle was really bad. He never, as you rightly point out, he never drew any attention to perceived incompetencies of said referee during that game, which was obviously our friend Kevin Clancy. Rightly, in my opinion, drew attention to the fact that it would be interesting had it been the injured player, the injured party, whether he would have been on the receiving end of reprimand from the referee had he caused injury to an opposing player. Claire White is so fit to question whether that's bringing the integrity of the referee into question, and in her wisdom has sought to say that Steven Gerrard should answer for his comments. It's utterly incredible that Rangers have got to be bothered with that kind of stuff. I'm really at a loss, Colin. I mean, we've spoke at length with regards to how Rangers are, number one, justifiably thought to be refereed to a different standard. I think a lot of Rangers supporters make the point that we do criticise referees and their perceived incompetence when we're winning, as well as when we may well be at the mercy of a bad decision, so that we can't be accused of crying foul when things go against us and it costs us points, that we do point out these inconsistencies when we're winning. But for the manager to be faced with this trash is just, it's incredible. And it makes me cast my mind back to when the witch hunt that Graham Souness was at the mercy of, when the SFA back in the late 80s and into the early 90s, when there was a lot of jealousy going on, and they sought to make an example of Graham Souness. And you could pose the question, did it factor into Graham's thinking about whether he was doing the right thing about moving down to Anfield? I just hope that this isn't a part of a concerted effort to try and sicken Stevie Gerrard. into leaving Rangers. But that's tinfoil hat territory possibly. But just to come to the point, as I say, if the accusations of Gerrard having to answer these charges is utterly preposterous.
David Wren, I think David makes some good points there. I hate to go down the road. I know he sort of mentioned they're heading into tinfoil hat territory, but how do Rangers deal with this? Because it is a continuing issue with the compliance officer. But I mean, the stats are there to see that there are inconsistencies, and that we have been on the receiving end of a disproportionate amount of retrospective action. But given that Rangers, it doesn't feel like they would have anyone of any merit in the sort of corridors of power, and we certainly don't have a compliant media. We don't have many friends in the media who are going to argue our case here. So how do Rangers deal with this?
That's the $1 million question, isn't it? I don't know. I don't know how you look at that and how you communicate, the best way of dealing with it or changing things. But what I would say is, in terms of these sorts of, charges, does it mean that, managers aren't allowed to have an opinion on, things that happen within a game? Because the more that goes on and the more they're reprimanded for, things like that and comments like that, then there's no point, having anything other than the most basic of post-match media and ways of communicating with the supporters, because that's what it's all about, though. It's about getting the take of the manager and the players after the game. And if it gets to a point where you're going to be charged for having an opinion on a tackle or on a decision, then the game's a bogey a wee bit there. And to be fair, what he said, as David said, it wasn't. He could have gone a lot further. It could have been a lot more robust than what he said. And I thought it was fair enough what Gerrard, said that day. And actually, I was surprised that he didn't go further. So yeah, but it's difficult. It's a really difficult one in terms of how you try and at least get clarity on how these decisions have been made.
It'll be interesting to see what happens to Gary Holt, because he was quite critical, the referee last week when Livingston played Celtic. I think he had a comment about one of the goals which he felt was offside, and he made a comment around, well, you're looking for your officials to help you there. You're looking for them to come out with the right decision. So it'll be interesting to see what happens to him, because I think what he said there, I don't think it's controversial at all, but it's in the same sort of category as what Steven Gerrard said. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Guys, moving on to next week in the game against Ross County. Now, I was looking at the league table today. They're currently sitting 7th on 11 points. On a bit of a bad run at the moment, though. Lost their last 3 games, haven't scored a goal, and conceded 9, I believe. So they're on a bit of a bad run. We've got a good record against them. Home tie, we're on form. David Fraser, you would hope that this is a good opportunity to get 3 points and maybe even up the goal difference again.
Yeah. County, as you say, they've not a great record against us of late, and we've got a good record at home. So, without labouring the point, I don't see any reason, if we maintain our current levels, as to why Ross County would pose us any problems. We just need to be professional. Obviously, injuries and team selection headaches that may arise as a result of the intervening fixtures might cause Stevie a headache. But if we play like we can, and we've got a good squad to pick from, and put a settled team in the park that are at it, to use a Sounessism, I don't see any reason why we can't collect maximum points. And if we're really on song like we were today, we can't eat into the goals for, Colin.
David Wren, Celtic are they travel to Perth to face St Johnstone. they've got the lunchtime kick-off on Sunday. So if they, as you would expect, pick up the points, it becomes crucial that not only that we beat Ross County, that we try and increase that goals for column as well.
Yeah, it's maybe good for us to get that wee bit of pressure as well after they've played. But no, it'll be good to go back. Hopefully after a positive result in Europe, because that would be fantastic to have a similar week to what we've had this week, because it's been great to see so many goals flying in and to get two, great performances like that back to back. So hopefully we're looking, and next Sunday, whoever's on the podcast, are having as much positive vibes as we are.
Right, guys, finish up. Just a wee sort of light-hearted topic to wrap the show up. Super Ali turned 58 this week. I'm actually struggling to believe that he's approaching 60. It feels incomprehensible that Super Ali's approaching that age, but he is, and I thought it'd be a good chance to talk about his relationship with the sport, because I feel during his sort of time as manager, and especially when we went down the leagues, that was damaged. He was always a legend in the eyes of the supporters, but it felt to me that was damaged a wee bit. And I must admit, it was damaged with myself. I kind of became a bit frustrated with some of the stuff that he'd done at that point. But recently, I've started to feel the love again for McCoist. I think the stuff that he's doing on Talk Sport, stuff that he's doing on Instagram, and it feels to me like he's still a strong ambassador for Rangers Football Club. David Fraser, I'll come to you first on this. Super Ali, still super.
Aye. Just in my eyes. I loved Ali as a player, like yourself, Colin. He's one of the Rangers heroes growing up, when I was growing up, and I worshipped the ground that Ali walked on. He could do no wrong. Some of his match-winning goals. Remember a night at Hampden, a horrible night at Hampden, Scottish Cup semi-final '92, and David Robertson gets sent off for body checking Joe Miller on the halfway line by Andrew Waddle, and Ali's goal that night was phenomenal. His overhead kick in the League Cup final against Hibs at the Chamber of Secrets, fantastic. Countless goals against our pals. He was a hero. And then he comes back to the club after the Le Guen debacle as Walter's right-hand man. Dipped his toe in the water, taking the side for the Scottish Cup ties, and managed to put a cup-winning team in the park against Queen of the South, if I recall. And then obviously assumed the hot seat, or the electric chair, as may well be appropriate, under the stewardship of Craig White. Then it all seemed to just go pear-shaped for Ali. Certainly not the season in the third division. I remember the final game of the season when we set a world record for a fourth-tier league game against Berwick Rangers, when he was on the pitch, and the rallying call to the support of We Are the People, because of how well we'd backed the club in such dark times. And then it all fell apart. Fans questioning his managerial ability, what his take in the game was, and it undoubtedly divided opinion. That's before you get to all the behind the scenes stuff about shares and his remuneration and what have you, and his general demeanour when he was had to put his politician's hat on, if you like. But I've often have discussions where Ali comes into the equation with some fans, some family members as well, who maybe don't look upon Ali as kindly as a lot of Rangers supporters. And I always bring up the fact that were it not for Ali McCoist during the negotiations of the 5-way agreement, I think if Ali hadn't been in situ, and especially given Sandy Jardin's failing health at the time, I think it was a distinct possibility that we may well have been stripped of some certainly trophies, certainly cup wins, possibly even league titles. And Ali, I think, played a monumental part in ensuring that wasn't the case. I think Charles Green may well have been predisposed to going with the flow, given that he was just the new kid in town with regards to the boardroom discussions with the league and the SFA and TV companies and what have you. So, he certainly divides opinion, and without hogging the airwaves any longer, I think he's a bit of a required taste. He splits opinion with regards to his media duties. I mean, he likes to paint the persona that he's everyone's pal. He doesn't really seem to get anybody's back up, and it's, some supporters don't take to it. So you cast your mind back last week and his pals act with Ian Crocker, somebody who clearly doesn't like Rangers. If you watch the game of the day and listen to Ian Crocker's voice when their third goal went in, the deflation and the resignation that Motherwell weren't doing their part today to keep the league race interesting, that doesn't sit well with a lot of supporters, and obviously the money that he was earning, given that we were in the third division at the time. But I am with you. I'll side with you. I would say he's just in the credit. He's just in the credit as opposed to the debit line on the balance sheet. So he's still super to me.
David Wren, final call on this. What about Super Ali for you? Still super?
I'm not going to sit in the fence here. I absolutely love Ali McCoist. He was way before my time in terms of seeing him play. But I mean, just to me, Ali McCoist represents Rangers in many ways. Just everything about him. I think he's like, for guys my age, probably, I don't know, certainly speak for myself, but he's like your dad almost. Every Rangers fan my age will feel like that, I think. Fantastic. I think he's a great broadcaster. I think he's really, really entertaining, funny. He was obviously a fantastic player and a great servant, greatest ever goal scorer. I think I had a season ticket during the McCoist years, and I forgive him for, signing Kevin Kyle, Ignastios Aguirre and Sebastian Faure and Ian Black. Probably not, but for me, I would never let his spell as manager cloud my judgment over what he means to me as a Rangers fan. I think to many others. I think in terms of Ali McCoist, he epitomises what Rangers is all about for me personally. I mean, I know I can understand people that have issues with him, but for me, no doubt that he's still super, and no doubt he's a massive hero of mine, and just a year younger than you, Colin. So fantastic guy, fantastic young man.
Well, he does have one thing in common with me. We were both up Ben Lomond the other week there, but in terms of age, he's got a good. I think he's got a good 10 year on me. So and I'm kind of like both you guys. I mean, I was 10-year-old when McCoy signed for Rangers in 1983. And, I can remember my dad hated him when he first arrived, and I think you need to give McCoist a lot of credit for that, because he came through that early period of his career, he really struggled. And he had the sort of mental strength to get through that, and he showed how good a player he was. 2 golden boots, towards the end, he's, for sort of 26, 27 onwards, he was just unstoppable at Rangers. His managerial thing did upset me a wee bit, some of the stuff that went on. But no, and Time's a great healer. And Ali's super for me again, I must admit. So if you're listening, Ali, you're older than me, but you're still super to me. And I think a lot of supporters are starting to feel like that again. And I think there was a good point made earlier on. I think during those whole negotiations, regarding what was going to happen with Rangers at the time, I think he knows a lot of stuff, and I would like to see what he knows. Maybe bring a book out in a few years about it, but I think he knows a lot of stuff that went on in the background. Anyway, guys, conscious of time, so we'll wrap things up there. So that's all for this week's edition of the Gersnet Weekly Podcast, the Independent Rangers podcast. It's brought to you by fans for fans. A big thank you to the 2 Davids and the confusion that they gave me tonight, but big thanks to them and their contributions. obviously, big week coming up for Rangers again. Galatasaray on Thursday night, Ross County next Sunday. There'll be a show next Sunday night to cover those things. In the meantime, get yourself onto the website and forums at www.gersnet.co.uk. Guys, obviously there's been increased restrictions recently. A wee reminder that this virus hasn't gone away. So as always, stay safe, look after yourselves, and bye for now.